Still trying to buy affection, huh? I heard every word clearly. Cold. Precise. I stood there, my hand still lightly touching the plain navy folder unlabeled. I had thought about tying a ribbon on it, but felt it would be awkward. Simple, I thought, would suit my personality better. A practical gift, no frills, no show of gratitude. Just a way to share the burden Isabelle would have to bear for the wedding. A venue deposit worth $5,000. A credit confirmation for the wedding dress she'd been dreaming of since last month, and a $40 $500 check, nothing written on it except my sister's name. Isabelle was wearing a pastel pink silk dress, her face meticulously made up, her nails freshly painted in shimmery beige. She looked at me and smiled, not surprised. No thank you. No immediate opening of the gift. She just slowly flipped open the folder as if it contained an apology for being born 6 years before her. And then came that sentence. Still trying to buy affection, huh? My mother, sitting to my left, flinched slightly but didn't react. She just leaned toward me and whispered, "Don't be too sensitive. You know how she is." I nodded. I knew. I had always known. And that was the moment I gently took back the folder. "And this is mine," I said calmly. Not angry. Not shouting. I turned and walked toward the door, leaving behind the confused glances of a few cousins, my mother's exasperated sigh, and a crowd that had always seen me as the backdrop to the party. My name is Rachel Parker, 34 years old. The eldest daughter of the Parker family, 3 generations of owners of the Parker & Sons furniture chain. People often called me the model older sister, the kind of person no one feared, but everyone assumed would always be there when needed. Unintrusive, undemanding, unremarkable. I didn't work in design or run any branches. I handled finances, which my father often called a dry but necessary job. I used to believe that was true until I learned he had signed papers appointing Belle as the future marketing director after her wedding, without consulting or informing me. Belle short for Isabelle, my younger sister. Born to the applause of relatives, raised with all expectations shifted from me to her. I was never jealous. Truly, I wasn't. I just always thought love was something given naturally without competition. But it seems I was wrong. That evening I returned to my small apartment on the 12th floor in the city's west side. I placed the folder on the kitchen table, brewed a cup of chamomile tea, and stared at it for 2 hours. In my mind, I replayed every time I defended Belle to our parents, every time I helped her move, every time I stood by her when she cried over a breakup. Not once was it mentioned. Not one thank you lingered. I made 3 phone calls. 1 to the venue I requested to cancel the contract, no refund needed. 2 to the bridal shop I asked to cancel the credit and release the dress hold. 3 to the bank I tore up the check on webcam, then burned it in the sink. I didn't cry. Nor did I feel relieved. Just still. The next morning I had 10 missed calls. 4 voicemails from Belle, 2 crying, 1 shouting, 1 whispering. "I can't believe you'd do this." Jared, Belle's fiancé, texted, "You're ruining the most important day of our lives. Stay out of things that don't concern you." I laughed. I had been meddling in everything for years. Giving money when they needed it. Covering up Belle's lies. Calling on behalf of our parents when Belle disappeared for 3 Thanksgivings in a row. I didn't reply. I just saved the message proof that even silence has an expiration date. 3 days later I got a call from my father, not to check in, not to understand why. He spoke curtly. "You've embarrassed the family. From now on, stay out of company matters. That's the collective decision." I said fine. No arguing, no questioning. But he seemed more unsettled by my silence than anything else. I remember my mother's voice when she stopped by that late afternoon. "This will blow over. You should apologize to her not because you're wrong, but because you're the older sister." I didn't respond. I was no longer the one who always yielded for the sake of peace. That evening I sorted through old files in my small home office. In a drawer I found a draft financial report I'd presented a year ago, a plan to optimize cash flow and improve operational transparency. It was rejected by my father. He said, "No need to make a fuss. Our family's doing fine," but I knew the company was bleeding. That night I received an email from Alan, one of the company's major investors. The subject line was simple: "We need to talk." I didn't reply immediately. I just stared at the subject line, a premonition stirring that this was no longer just about me and Belle. The matter had moved beyond that party room, and I was ready to cross the line. On Monday morning I went to the company, as usual stepped into the elevator, and pressed the button for the administrative floor. No one looked at me. No one greeted me. My office, once bearing the sign, Rachel Parker, Financial Oversight, had been replaced with a simple plaque temporarily unoccupied. A young assistant, I think her name was Madison, avoided my gaze when I asked for the key. I think you should call Uncle Dean directly, she mumbled before turning away. Uncle Dean, the current CEO, had been avoiding me since the party. In fact, he always had. I understood immediately. I had been removed from the system, no announcement, no meeting. Just erased from the org chart. I went home, ignoring my mother's voicemails. She had tried calling 3 times, her voice unnaturally gentle. You shouldn't make things so serious. Your father is just protecting the family's honor. You understand? I didn't understand. Not anymore. That evening, I opened my laptop and drafted a private analysis, the numbers I'd been quietly tracking for 2 years. Fluctuating revenue, marketing costs exceeding thresholds, preferential contracts for Belle's department. I had warned them. I had proposed reforms. But no one wanted to listen because I wasn't the chosen one. I paused when I saw an old starred email from my grandfather sent over a year ago. It was just a brief thank you after I helped him revise his personal tax filings. But at the end, he wrote, "You're the only one in the family who sees the leaks before they become cracks." Back then, I thought he was just praising my accounting skills. Now, I wasn't sure. I didn't know how much he saw that he never spoke of. And perhaps he too had been treated like me, but chose silence. I started dreaming of him in the nights that followed. In my dreams, he sat on the back porch, wearing a hand-knit sweater, holding a chess book and saying nothing. He just looked at me with distant eyes like someone who knew the sorrow I was tasting. On Friday, my mother showed up unannounced. Still in her familiar beige trench coat, still carrying the box of cookies she always brought when she felt guilty but wasn't ready to apologize. She placed it on the kitchen counter, looking around my apartment as if assessing whether I was doing okay. I didn't invite her in, but she stepped inside as if it were still her home. "Belle, she's been crying a lot," my mother began. I didn't respond. "You should understand she's young. Everything's coming at her so fast she wasn't prepared." I quietly poured tea, sliding a cup toward her. "We just want things to go smoothly. That's how our family is. When it's about saving face, you should know to yield a little. Keep up appearances. Keep up appearances." I didn't know when truth became something to brush aside for appearances. I looked at my mother, the woman who stayed up all night watching over me when I had seizures at 7, the one who taught me to write with her trembling hand. But now she no longer saw me. She only saw trouble. "We still want you at the wedding. Don't overthink it. You're still part of the family." I nodded slightly. I understood. The invitation wasn't because they wanted me there, but because they feared people asking, "Where's the sister?" I said I'd think about it. But I knew I would go. Not to celebrate, but to end something within myself. In the days that followed, I started reorganizing my home. Not because it was messy, but because I felt the need for order both outside and within. I gathered all company-related documents and stored them in a sealed box. I changed my computer's wallpaper from the Parker & Sons logo to a sunset photo I took in Oregon. I unfollowed Belle's Instagram. I cleaned out things no one could see, self-blame, doubt, the habit of drafting emails I never sent. The night before Alan's call, the investor who was a longtime friend of my grandfather, I dreamed of Belle again. In the dream, she stood in the middle of the wedding hall, wearing a white dress, lips pursed, eyes empty. I approached, but she turned away. I woke up sighing, not angry, not sad, just it was time to let go. Alan called me on Tuesday afternoon, right after I'd brewed my second cup of coffee. His voice was as gruff as usual, but there was something different in his tone. He didn't beat around the bush. "I heard you were let go. Not officially, but it's clear." "I guess so. Your father's pushing projects we don't agree with. Cutting budgets, internal reshuffling, doing a lot without consulting anyone." I stayed silent. "I need to meet you, privately, not personal. Strategic." Strategic. I had been cut out of the family, but now I was being invited as a partner in a bigger game. For the first time I saw it wasn't others cutting me off, it was me being freed from the last of my ties. I arranged to meet him the next afternoon at a small cafe near the old building where my grandfather used to work. The April breeze was cool, carrying the rich scent of plum blossoms and exhaust. Alan didn't mince words. "We need someone clear-headed to steer the company back on track. Are you ready?" I didn't answer immediately. I just looked out the window, seeing my reflection quietly staring back. For years I had lived as a shadow, silent, useful, needing no applause. But from the moment my sister held up that check in front of everyone and laughed, I knew the time for silence was over. "From now on, I won't be cut out anymore," I said. I'm choosing to step forward, and I knew the wedding invitation I'd just received would be my first stage. I knew I wasn't expected when I walked into the wedding venue. No one looked up. No greetings. No smiles. My mother was near the guest table pretending to adjust a flower arrangement. She saw me, I knew, but turned her head as if someone had called her name. My father was talking to a stranger holding a glass of wine, his face calm to the point of coldness. I slowly walked down the cream-carpeted hallway amid soft violin music and scattered whispers from the tables. My name wasn't on the seating chart. Nowhere. I asked a young server who looked at me awkwardly before pointing to a table at the far end near the bar. "You could probably sit there, if it's okay." I smiled. No, I didn't mind. It was the last seat far enough from the stage to see clearly, but unnoticed by others. The table had only 4 people. 3 were Jared's colleagues, one of whom mistook me for a friend of the groom. When he asked, "How long have you known Jared?" I just smiled and said I'm still wondering that myself. The wedding began on time. Everything was perfectly arranged: silk tablecloths, crystal glasses, scented candles in tall glass holders. Isabelle appeared like a princess from a Pinterest board, flowing white dress, wavy hair makeup, just enough to hide the fatigue I noticed immediately. She was beautiful, but I no longer felt proud. The ceremony was quick. Jared read his vows, calling Isabelle his companion for life, with a slightly performative enthusiasm. Isabelle read hers, 2 flowery words carefully chosen, but hollow. I had heard her trembling voice when she asked me to help pay her last month's rent before moving out. Today I only heard a polished, empty performance. They exchanged rings, they kissed. The room applauded. I didn't. The reception began and I ate a few bites of salad to avoid hunger, then sat quietly listening to the speeches drizzle down like light rain. The maid of honor, Isabelle's college friend, told a story about stealing vodka in their dorm days. The guests roared with laughter. Then the best man, whose name I didn't know, spoke about Jared's wild past and how Isabelle had tamed him. It all sounded like a rehearsed comedy, and I was the only audience member not laughing. When my father stood up, the room fell silent, as if on command. He held the mic with gravitas eyes, fixed on the couple, speaking sweet words about love, overcoming challenges, and the pride of the Parker family. He thanked everyone for coming, thanked Belle and Jared for building a future on trust and kinship. Not once did he look at me. Not one word mentioned me. The one who paid the deposit, kept the financial struggles quiet, stood behind Isabelle for years. It wasn't an oversight. It was deliberate. And then the moment I'd been waiting for arrived. The MC, a DJ, doubling as host, wearing a Bordeaux vest and bow tie, smiled brightly, his voice lively. And now if anyone would like to share a few words with the happy couple, the mic is open. Please come forward. No one stood up. I did. The room seemed to move in slow motion. A few heads turned. Some whispered. My mother, mid-sip, froze with her wine glass in the air. My father gripped his glass tighter. Isabelle stared straight at the stage lips, pursed hands clutching her bouquet. I walked slowly to the stage. My heartbeat steady, my hands unshaking. I took the mic. No notes. No rehearsal. Just the truth. "Hello, everyone. I'm Rachel Bell's sister." A few polite nods. "I won't take long. Just want to share a little?" I took a breath, my eyes scanning the room, every person, every gaze. Today's party is beautiful. The venue, the food, the lighting, everything is perfect. But honestly, this party almost didn't happen. Silence. I heard a spoon clatter somewhere. 3 weeks ago, this wedding was nearly impossible. Fees weren't paid. The dress wasn't secured. The plans were falling apart. And I chose to help. Quietly. I paused, then continued. I paid the venue deposit. I transferred credit for the dress. I gave cash not for thanks, but to ease my sister's burden. That's all. Now no one laughed. No one drank. No one chewed. And I handed it all to Belle in a folder. In front of everyone, she held up the check and said, I turned to my sister, voice soft. "Still trying to buy affection, huh?" Dead silence. At that moment, I understood. I'd spent too many years trying to be useful only to be seen as a nuisance. I took everything back. Let them figure it out. And from what I know, the cost to get back to this moment was over $12,000. I looked at my father, my mother, Belle, but I'm not saying this to blame anyone. I'm saying it because I've been silent too long. I used to fear being misunderstood, feared being a burden, but not anymore. Not today. I lowered the mic, saying my final words. I'm done being silent. I stepped down, not looking back. A single clap rang out, slow, firm. I turned and saw it was my grandfather. He stood, clapped twice, then sat back down. No one followed. My grandmother leaned over, patting his shoulder lightly, but he wasn't ashamed. He looked at me, his eyes deep as the sea, and nodded. I left the venue through a side exit, heading straight to the parking lot without my coat. The evening breeze was cold, but not biting. I got into my car, closed the door, and sat there for a few minutes in silence. No one followed. No one called. I didn't feel sad. I felt I had finally stepped out of a role I'd played for far too long. People think power comes from the loudest voice in the room, the name on the door, or the chair at the head of the table. I used to think so. But when Alan set his coffee down and looked at me with eyes heavy with experience, I realized something else true. Power comes from doing what no one else dares in silence at the right moment. You don't need to take revenge, Alan said slowly. You just need to stop letting them underestimate you. That meeting happened 3 days after the wedding. I didn't tell anyone. Didn't share with friends, didn't note it in my calendar. We sat in an old-fashioned cafe, oak tables, black and white photos on the walls. Alan wore a turtleneck sweater, looking more like a retired grandfather than a seasoned investor. "We've let your father run things too long," he continued. "Maybe out of respect for your grandfather. Maybe out of exhaustion. But we can't ignore it anymore." I sat quietly. What he said only confirmed what I'd known for a long time. My father was no longer fit to run the company. Hasty decisions, uncontrolled spending, constant personnel changes, severed ties with old suppliers without notice. But what weighed on me most wasn't his competence. It was how he chose to cut me out of the game. "We're preparing a shareholder meeting," Alan said, "and we want you there. Not as a symbol, but to lead." I didn't answer immediately. I went home, opened my laptop, and looked at the data I'd been quietly updating despite no longer being on the payroll. From the numbers, I saw the decline clearly, and I also saw an opportunity. The next 3 weeks, I started showing up again, literally and strategically. I didn't go to my old office. I sat in the common area, used my personal laptop, and met with the audit team as a temporary consultant. No one officially acknowledged me, but no one dared stop me. They knew why I was there, even if no one said it aloud. My father reacted as I expected. At first, he pretended not to see me. Whenever I entered a room, he'd bury himself in papers, feigning busyness. When my presence stretched into the second week, he grew colder, interrupting me in meetings, emphasizing his authority. "We've decided this," he said in one board meeting. "No need for more questions. I asked anyway. And I asked the right ones. This month's PR costs are 3 times higher than last quarter." "Why?" He paused for a second, then gave a faint smile. "You still care about this?" I didn't answer. I just let everyone in the room see he had no response. That evening, I got a message from Alan. "We have 3 votes for a change in leadership. We need 1 more to proceed." I sat in the dark living room with only a soft yellow lamp on. Everything was so quiet, I could hear the wall clock ticking. I didn't feel triumphant, nor anxious, just a calm sense of responsibility. I wasn't returning to overthrow my father. I was returning because the company deserved to be run with reason, not by the pride of a man who couldn't accept aging. The fateful meeting took place on a Monday morning. I wore a light gray blazer, hair neatly tied back, carrying a presentation with numbers, analyses, and specific reform proposals. No emotions, not a single accusation. The boardroom was silent when the chairman announced the vote. 3 hands went up. 1 stayed down. My father's eyes locked on the last person, Uncle Dean, who had followed him for nearly 2 decades. Dean's hand hesitated. Then slowly, it rose. Majority consensus, the chairman nodded. "As of today, operational authority is transferred to the interim director, Rachel Parker." No applause, no congratulations. Just the shifting of gazes as if witnessing the inevitable. I didn't go straight to the director's office. I stood in the hallway looking through the large glass window. The maple tree outside was shedding leaves. The wind spun them before they fell onto the roof. No noise, no drama. Just the time had come. That afternoon, my father walked into the office. No knock, no waiting for an invitation. "You think you've won?" he asked, his voice bitter. I didn't answer right away. I looked at him. The man who drove me to my first day of school held my hand. When my grandfather passed, told me, "This family needs you." And the same man who months ago signed papers to remove me from the board without warning. I spoke slowly without malice. No, I don't think I've won. I just think I'm not losing anymore. He scoffed. You don't understand this company. It'll swallow you, I said softly. At least this time I'll know what I'm being swallowed for. He didn't retort. He just looked around the room he once saw as his domain. Then he turned and left, saying nothing more. I sat at the desk, opened my laptop, and began my first meeting as the one steering the ship. That night I drove to my grandfather's old house. Sitting in the car, I looked up at the second-floor window where he used to read. Though he was gone, I felt he was still there, looking down, nodding quietly. I didn't need anyone's praise. I just needed to know that if he were alive, he'd understand why I did this. Back home, I found a voicemail from Isabelle's falling apart. She thinks you're ruining her life. I listened unmoved, then turned off the phone. I wasn't ruining anything. I was just done playing the savior when everyone saw me as the sacrifice. I didn't need apologies. I needed to live with basic respect. But what I didn't expect was the first person to show up wasn't Belle. It was my mother. When my phone rang on Tuesday morning, I wasn't going to answer. Jared's number flashed on the screen 3 times in a row. I let it ring, partly because I was busy finalizing a staff restructuring plan, partly because I didn't think there was anything new to hear from him. On the 4th call, I picked up. Not out of softness, but because I believed sometimes to understand how far someone has fallen, you have to hear the sound of their descent. Rachel Jared's voice was hoarse, direct. I'm not calling to argue. I didn't respond. Waited for him to continue. Belle, she just got fired. A pause. Then she used the company card to pay part of the wedding expenses. Thought she could cover it before anyone noticed. But she didn't. I closed my eyes, feeling neither pain nor joy. Just a sense that, finally, consequences had found the right address. She thinks you're behind it, Jared continued. Do you believe that? I do, I said softly, but I didn't know. Really? If she needs someone to blame to keep from falling apart, let it be me. Jared was silent, perhaps surprised I didn't fight back. I exhaled steadily. But if you truly care about her, don't defend her. Tell her this is the time to grow up, not to find a scapegoat. That afternoon when I got home, there was a pale yellow envelope in my mailbox, addressed to me in familiar, slanted handwriting. No sender's address. I opened it, finding just a single sheet of paper. No date, no title. You did what I never dared. You stood up refusing to be silenced. Keep the name but change its meaning. I'm proud. Grandpa. I sat down, still holding the paper, my throat tightening. I didn't know when he wrote it. Maybe months before he passed. Maybe longer. Maybe Alan had held on to it until the right moment. His handwriting was still the same, steady, even, unadorned. Each sentence short but heavy, resonating in my chest. I placed the paper in my desk drawer. No lamination, no framing. I wanted it to age naturally, a tangible proof that the deepest support sometimes doesn't need words, just a single appearance at the right time. A year after my grandfather's passing, I held a small memorial at my home. No formal invitations, no cards. I just called my mother a week earlier, saying if anyone wanted to remember him, my door was open. That morning I woke early, brewed coffee, set the dining table, and placed his photo in the center. It was a picture of him with his old chessboard eyes gazing far off, face serene. I made pumpkin soup, braised beef, and his favorite applesauce. No grand decorations, just a bouquet of white daisies and a few wooden chairs around the table. My mother arrived first, carrying a tray of salad, nodding lightly when I opened the door. She didn't say hello, but placed the dish in its spot, took plates, and arranged cutlery. Maybe for her, that was another way of saying I'm here. My father came later, quiet, in a dark coat, looking tired. He sat down, said little, only asking, "Got any beer?" I nodded, poured him a small glass. The air flowed silently. People began eating. No one mentioned my grandfather. No one recounted old stories. Just the sound of spoons clinking on plates, soft, breathing a few polite questions. Until the doorbell rang. I opened it. Isabelle stood there. A light gray wool coat hair, loose, holding a tray of warm apple pie. The scent of cinnamon and butter wafted in the late autumn air. She didn't say hi, just held out the tray. Grandpa liked apple pie, I remember she whispered. I took the tray, said nothing. Didn't need to. Isabelle stepped inside her eyes, passing over our parents, then landing on Grandpa's photo. She didn't sit next to me or near Mom. She chose an empty chair at the head of the table facing the window. The breeze gently stirred the curtains as if welcoming someone back, My mother placed a piece of beef in my bowl. My father nodded once, unclear if it was a greeting or agreement. Isabelle looked down, then up, her eyes red but tearless. I didn't know how long it took her to decide to walk through my door, but I knew it wasn't easy, and it wasn't too late. The meal ended in unforced peace. No one brought up the past. No one asked about the arguments, the jabs, the distances once thought unbridgeable. But small gestures, the gentle push of a chair, a hand on a shoulder, while washing dishes, serving food to another, were tiny bridges, small but real. I sat for a while after everyone left alone at the table. A piece of apple pie remained on the plate, slightly cool but still fragrant. I took a small bite, soft, sweet, and somehow a strange feeling rose in me, not happiness, but peace. No apologies needed, no explanations required, just showing up and placing a warm pie on the table. That night I placed my grandfather's letter next to his photo. I didn't pray. I just whispered loud enough for only me to hear, "I'll keep this name, but I'll make it mean something else." As I turned off the light to go to bed, my phone pinged with a new email. The sender was one of the 3 board members. The subject line read, "The time has come." I opened it. The message was brief. "We have enough votes to formally nominate Rachel Parker as permanent CEO. The meeting is next week. Be ready." I looked at the words, my heart not racing, not overwhelmed. I just saw one thing clearly: I had come this far, not to sit higher, but to rebuild from what others saw as ruins. And I knew no one could take that from me anymore. No one said it aloud, but I knew they were watching. Every step I took down the familiar hallway, every coffee I brewed myself, every meeting where I sat at the head of the table, silent before speaking. They didn't ask questions openly, but I saw the challenge in the eyes of some older managers, as if they were wondering, is she truly capable, or just the new face of a political decisions? I didn't blame them, because even I in the early days sitting in the chair once my father's wondered, am I in the wrong seat? But then the work answered for me. The numbers, the meetings, the sessions, listening to old clients, all showed that what this company needed wasn't just someone who could lead, but someone who knew when to stay silent and when to speak up. I started with small things, removing a few irrational policies, restoring ties with 3 long-term suppliers Belle and my father had deemed inflexible, adjusting the marketing budget to a reasonable level, and reopening an anonymous feedback channel for employees. No press conferences, no grandiose emails. Every change was documented, verified, executed. No fanfare, but effective. And then the skeptical looks began turning into quiet observation. Some started nodding when they saw me in the elevator. Some knocked on my door for advice instead of sending perfunctory reports. I didn't expect loyalty. I just needed them to do their jobs responsibly. And it seemed they were starting to realize I didn't need their affection. I needed their respect. Belle stopped her online attacks in the 4th week. No more veiled posts, no more jabs about someone living to steal the spotlight. I didn't know what made her stop. Maybe the public reaction wasn't what she expected. Maybe she was just tired. I didn't ask. I didn't block her. I let silence do what no argument could. My mother didn't show up, but she sent a book to my office, leading with "yourself." No note, no signature. I knew it was her. The choice of book, the slightly careless wrapping the burgundy ribbon. I kept it on my shelf unopened. It was just there, like an unspoken sentence. My father was different. He showed up one Friday afternoon unannounced, as if just passing by. I was sorting papers when I heard a short knock. "You free?" I nodded. He didn't come into the office. Just stood in the hallway, hands in pockets, eyes looking outside. "Want to grab a drink?" he asked. I didn't expect it, but I nodded. We sat in a small bar a few blocks from the office. Dark wooden counter, dim yellow lights, jazz playing softly. He ordered a whiskey. I stuck to water. No one mentioned the company. No one brought up the past. It was as if we were pretending to be strangers sitting side by side on a lightly rainy afternoon. Then, after a few minutes of silence, he spoke. "You were right." I turned, unsure if I'd heard correctly. "It's just, I wasn't ready to accept it." I said nothing. Didn't nod. Didn't smile. I let his words drift into the air like a stone dropping into a lake, not loud, but leaving ripples. "The company needs you," he continued. "Now I see it clearly." I set my glass down, looking into his eyes for the first time since the vote. "I'm not doing this because the company needs me. I'm doing it because I couldn't stay silent anymore." He nodded. His eyes were the same, but the layer of arrogance had faded. We didn't hug, didn't apologize, just stood paid and went our separate ways. But I knew the boundaries had shifted, and this time, it was on my terms. At the end of the month, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. Dawn was just breaking sunlight slanting softly through the glass, spilling onto the pale gray carpet. I opened the window wide, letting the cool air flood in. No one knew today marked a year since my father removed me from the company. No commemorative posts, no inspirational speeches, no before and after photos shared on social media. I didn't need anyone to witness. I just needed myself not to turn back. I stood by my desk, lifted my grandfather's handwritten letter from the drawer, and reread it. His handwriting was still clear, though the paper had slightly yellowed. Keep the name, but change its meaning. I gently folded the letter and placed it back. Next to it was a new notebook where I was jotting down plans for the next year, sustainable improvements training for young staff, reinstating an internal scholarship fund that had been discontinued. Not for praise, but because I knew this company, if led with the right values, could be something decent in many people's lives. My story isn't about revenge. It's about growing up from enduring silently to daring to say enough. I once believed that to be loved, I had to give unconditionally. But when I stopped, I realized true love doesn't demand sacrifice to the point of exhaustion. Forgiveness isn't waiting for an apology. It's deciding to move forward without needing others to understand. Sometimes peace comes not from defeating someone, but from no longer needing to prove anything. If you've ever been the one on the sidelines in a family, a company, or a relationship, remember you deserve your own place. Don't fear starting over even alone. Thank you for listening to the end of my story. If you feel a connection, leave a comment below, share your thoughts, and follow the channel to not miss the next stories. I'll be back. And who knows, the next story might be yours.